All right, so next we're just going to go through a bunch of examples of simplifying with exponents. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can work through these 6 problems I have. All right. Now, as I work through these, keep in mind that there is more than one correct way to get to the final answer. So if your work looks a little bit different than mine, as long as we're getting the same final answer, that is okay. So it just depends on kind of what you see first, so how your mind works, and what you think would be an easier way to work through it. Okay. So as we look at this first one, again, we can distribute this power, since we have all multiplication inside, to each part, or we can deal with our negative exponent first. So the order that we do that in does not matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with this exponent to start with. And I'm going to write out my work the longhand way, so you do not have to show this much work. But what we're doing is we are taking negative 2 to the 4th, x to the negative 3 to the 4th, and then y squared to the 4th. Now, really when I write it out this way, I'm more concerned about this number. So anytime we have a number to a power, and it's starting in a parenthesis like this, when I take it to that exponent, I have to assume that it's still in there. So this means that I am taking negative 2 times itself 4 times. Okay, so this would give me a positive 4. And then this group is also a positive 4, and then I multiply, this will get me a 16. So if you're going to do that on your calculator, you need to make sure that you are putting your negative number in parentheses. So anytime you have a negative number and you're taking it to an exponent, I would always put it in parentheses. So we have that negative 2. And then on your graphing calculator, anytime you're trying to get an exponent higher than 2, we're going to press our caret key. So it's the key right below clear. I don't know why they call it a caret key, but that's what it is called. And then we would type in our exponent, so the 4. And then if we had to type in more information with what it looks like here, I would need to arrow to the right to get my cursor to come back down out of that superscript. Okay? And then we're just going to press enter. Okay. Now, again, if I don't put my negative number in a parenthesis, it's going to give me the wrong sign on the number. So that's why it's so important that you are typing it into your calculator correctly, because this means negative 1 times 2 to the 4th. But in our case, we're just taking negative 2 to the 4th power. Okay. So this becomes that positive 16. And then negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. So this will be x to the negative 12. And then 2 times 4 is 8. So y to the 8th. Okay. So now I need to deal with that negative exponent. So I'm thinking of this whole thing over a 1. And I'm moving down the base that has the negative exponent. Everything else stays in place. So this will be 16 y to the 8th over x to the positive 12. Okay, so this is my final simplified answer for this problem. Okay. Now it's also important to remember that if a number is negative, we are not allowed to move it to the opposite side of the fraction. Only a negative exponent can do that. Okay, so if a number is negative, it doesn't move to the opposite side of the fraction, just if we have that exponent that's negative. Okay. Now, just so you guys know, you could have started by moving that x to the negative 3 down. So if you started yours that way, then you would have had negative 2 y squared over x cubed, and then that would have been to the 4th, and we still would have ended up with the same final answer. Okay, so again, there's more than one correct way to work through these problems. All right, look, on to the next one. So that second one, we are dealing with numbers. So when I'm looking at my numbers, this 14 and negative 6 are both divisible by 2, and then since my denominator is negative, I need to make this a negative 2. So that means that this will become a negative 7 up in the numerator, and then that will be a positive 3 in the denominator. Okay. All right, so next, if I look at the ones with the same bases, okay, so as I am looking at my A's here, so let me color code these. So I have the same base, we're dividing, which means that we are subtracting. So I'm going to choose to subtract the bigger number minus the smaller number. So 7 minus 2 is 5. And then I'm putting my simplified answer where the larger number was. So since 7 is bigger than 2, that means that my simplified answer has to go down in the denominator. So this will be a to the 5th. And then in the next group with b as our base, since this is negative, that means that I should be moving it down to the denominator to make it positive. So I will still have b to the 5th, and then I'm bringing down that b to the negative 4, so it's going to become a positive 4. And then I have the same base in the denominator, so that means that I'm using my exponent rules to add those together. So my final answer for this will be negative 7 over 3a to the 5th, b to the 9th. All right, next one. I would always start by dealing with this negative exponent before I did anything on the inside. So remember, to make this a positive, we are flipping that fraction over. So this is going to be y squared over negative 2 x to the 4th, and then that will be to a positive 3. So now I can distribute. So power to a power, we're multiplying. So this will be y to the 6th, and then when I take negative 2 times itself 3 times, that will be negative 8, and then 4 times 3 is 12, so x to the 12. Okay. And then I shouldn't have a negative down in my denominator, so I'm just going to simplify that up to the numerator. So what's happening is that we're assuming that the top is a 1, so we're taking that 1 and that negative 8, and we're dividing each of them by negative 1. So this will be a negative y to the 6th over positive 8 x to the 12th as our final answer. All right, so next one. So I'm taking each of these groups times each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this negative group, so I'm thinking of it all as a fraction, down into the denominator. And then as I do that, I'm also going to simplify this group since it's to that 3. So that first one is staying the same. So this will still be 3x squared. And then I'm cubing everything in this one. So negative 2 times itself 3 times is negative 8. And then 4 times 3 is 12, so y to the 12th. Okay. And then this group gets moved down to the denominator, so this will be x to the 7th, y to the 0, and then to the positive 2. So now as I'm looking at these groups, we are multiplying, and I don't have an exponent on the outside. So we're just following our normal multiplication rules. So 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. And then I have an x and a y, so the bases aren't the same. So that means that our exponents aren't going to change. So this will be x squared y to the 12th. And then in the denominator, I am squaring everything. So 7 times 2 is 14. So x to the 14th. And then 0 times 2 is 0. And remember, anything to the 0 power is a 1. So really, this is just going to cancel out. Now, as I'm looking, I have an x in the numerator and in the denominator. So I need to simplify that. So 14 minus 2 is 12. So my final answer for this will be negative 24 y to the 12th over x to the 12th. All right, number 5. So our bases are the same, which means I can just add my exponents together. So this will be 3 to the 7th. So you should not be changing it to a 9 because it's the same idea as if I had x squared times x to the 5th. It would be x to the 7th. So your base has to be the same as what it was here. And then if we can simplify that number, we would. So again, I would just type in 3 to the 7th on my calculator. Oh, except I typed in the wrong number, 3 to the 7th. So 2,187 would be my final simplified answer. Now, if this is a really big number, so let's say I had to do 3 to the 77th power, our calculators aren't able to calculate that. And I know that because we end up getting this E here. So in that case, I would just leave my answer like this. So, but if it's a smaller number, then we can simplify that. All right, and then number 6. So again, this means -1 times 13 to that 0 power. And then anything to the 0 power is a 1. So I have -1 times 1, which is -1.